I had worked overseas for 6 years in Southeast Asia, and I had been in the business for a long time, gone to a lot of trade shows, knew a lot of people that were in the industry, and I had a plan to, I made a promise, personal promise to myself, that before I turned 50 years old, that I would start my own business. I should have done that at a much younger age because you need a lot of energy to run a business. Thankfully, I have a lot of energy, but a lot of that energy comes from the excitement of doing what you know is right and enjoying every moment of it. So how did I start the business? I put out a proposal to a few of my friends that were in the industry, and in particular, a gentleman, his name is Mr. Herjen. He read my proposal and thought, why not? Let's make this happen. And they were a company in transition as well. They had made telescopes and eyepieces for a lot of the famous telescope companies out there and been in business for a while, but they didn't have their own brand. And in China, there was a paper that I'd read, a government paper, where they wanted companies to go from being an OEM suppliers to having their own brands. And I thought, well, this makes sense, Let's take the company that's actually making the product, let's build a brand, but let's build in the quality and the features that the market's going to want. And so that was the approach, and with that backing, Mr. He also later with Rolf Bresser and with Helmut Ebert, they purchased Bresser, a company away from Mead Instruments. Mead Instruments was divesting itself of some of its assets, and one of them was the Bresser company in Europe. They purchased that company. Once they told me of this news, they were very excited about it. I said, well, can we become the exclusive distributor for Bresser products in the United States? And on a phone call, that's how that happened. The first Light series of products and the Explorer 1 series of products that we have are internal house brands. These are brands that we came up with to address a product line. So First Light is our mid-range tier of telescopes. It still has kind of the Explorer brand. It's called Explorer First Light. Explorer 1 is a spin-off also from the Explorer Scientific brand and is really kind of science toy level type products. We are also the official licensee for National Geographic. We do all their binoculars and telescopes and microscopes. And we have the Discovery Channel brand as well. And so that's all directed towards young astronomers. So in the amateur astronomy world, you have a couple of opportunities to engage a customer. One of them is from about age 4 years old, maybe up till about maybe 10 years old, or 11 or 12. Once they get into their teenage years, if you haven't got their attention by then, you've lost them. Okay, they're engaged with their social activities, with school, with gaming, with building relationships and stuff. After that happens, then they're in their young 20s. They're trying to get through school, build their careers, whatever. Even into their 30s, maybe they're working very hard and have little time to spend on something like astronomy. But by the time they hit their 40s, and Galileo, I'll point out, started his astronomy career at age 45, okay? They now have the discretionary income, and they have the inclination and the interest to do something like astronomy. So you do need to spend the time to really get into the serious end of this hobby. It's great when we see younger people getting into it, but I think that planting the seeds really starts with someone very young, 4 to 8, maybe up to 10 years old, and really planting those seeds to get them interested in science, and this is the real important part. This is why I'm into, I'm not selling washing machines or laser copiers or something, maybe a lot more profitable than selling a telescope, okay, because it's not a hugely profitable business. But the the excitement of seeing someone learn something about themselves, their place in the universe. They have become more aware of how the inner workings of the universe is, okay, and what that means to them. We think builds better citizenry. You know, we think that it actually makes a better world. Astronomers and non-astronomers across the country, maybe from around the world, are getting ready for the August 21st, 2017 total eclipse of the sun. I noticed that Astronomy magazine in their April edition here did a nice review of the ED80 Essential Series telescope. This is an airspace triplet. I thought of the name Explore Scientific because I wanted the company's name to be what we do. You know, and so I do a lot of web development in the past. I did, for instance, Mead Instruments for about 21 years. And when the web was new, you know, I was self-taught to do HTML, and I brought out Mead's first websites. Having looked at those websites now, you know, I realized they weren't that great, but it was, I guess, state of the art at the time. But I worked it backwards. I started searching for names, you know, that would go along with what we're doing, you know. So, and it just so happened I was able to type in Explore Scientific, and then I did I thought that sounds pretty good, and I did a domain search, and there it was. It was wide open, so I took it, explorescientific.com. And that became the brand name of the company. When someone is getting something that you made, you know, and you've kind of put your heart and soul into designing something and making something, and someone gets it, and they're able to use it in a way that, you know, I try to make product that can essentially disappear. I want people to use a telescope, and for the telescope itself to disappear, so that they're exploring with it, and they're seeing stuff they've never seen before, or they're seeing it better than they've ever seen it before. You know, whether it's visual or if they're doing astrophotography, when I see them go to like what they feel is the next level for them, I feel like it's a wonderful feeling. I mean, to know that you've made something like that. I don't take credit, though, for what our company is, and I don't take credit for the product per se, because the product's nothing without the users. The product's nothing, the brand is nothing without the customer. You know, the brand lives with them. You know, we're the janitors. Those of us that work at Explore Scientific, we're janitors for the brand, you know. The brand lives with that customer. And so if we're doing our job, then they're getting the product that they need, they have the support that they need, and we're supporting their lifestyle. We're supporting their lifestyle of exploration.
20 seconds and counting. T-minus 15 seconds. Guidance is internal. 12, 11, 10, 9. Ignition sequence start. 6.
When I was a kid, you know, I grew up during the Apollo era, and we were all, you know, absolutely, you know, glued to the television, watching, you know, the Apollo 11 space capsule go up, and we knew that we were actually really going to the moon. You know, it was just to describe that to you today. I mean, people today, after that generation, you know, we were constantly in space. We were constantly doing these amazing things, but to go to the moon for the very first time, to step foot on another body, you know, a celestial body like that, it was the thing of science fiction. And so we were all, our generation, many of us were interested in space in general. Most of us wanted telescopes, and I begged my parents like crazy, pestered them to get me a telescope, And I finally did get my first telescope, and seeing the moon through my own telescope was so gratifying to me. I lost track of that telescope. It was a little 40mm push-pull zoom refractor from Kmart. And I talked to my dad about it. I asked him, how did they arrive at getting this telescope? And he said, well, you'd pestered us for a couple of years for a telescope. And he was working at a place called LTV, which was an aerospace company. And so there were people there that were amateur astronomers and stuff, and they were mentioning to him that he should get a refractor, and they were giving him advice. After the kind of this long drawn out thing of 2 years, he decided I was ready for a telescope. And seeing the moon and the craters of the moon through that telescope, it's still burned in my memory now. I was 9, turning 10 years old at that time. I lost track of the telescope because I disassembled it. I'd messed it up, took the eyepieces apart, or the eyepiece apart. There was only one eyepiece to it. And so for years and years and years, I'd always wondered about, what had happened to the telescope eventually. I'm sure my parents threw it away because it was, just torn up. And about 2 years ago, I got the bug to try to find that telescope. And this is an interesting story because the one day that I really seriously go to find this telescope, I search on eBay and I find the telescope. And it was in brand new condition from 1970. And I think, oh my God, this is the telescope. And I figured that there was like a $30 bid on it or something like that already. And so I put up a high bid of $100. I wanted this telescope so badly. I get it for $34. It's shipped to me. It is absolutely brand new, mint condition. So I took this telescope out and I did the same thing again. I pulled the eyepiece out and looked at the moon. And that very same rush, and I don't even know how this happens, but that very same rush of seeing the moon for the very first time hit me like a ton of bricks. And I go, okay, this is why I'm into astronomy. And getting the backstory from my dad about it really was interesting to me. So. You'll talk to amateur astronomers, they'll tell you, hey, I started when I was a boy or a girl, and I've always been doing it, and I still do it, and I'm going to do it the rest of my life. That is them, that's their lifestyle, that's who they are. You have to remember, astronomy is a lifestyle. It's not a sport. Astronomers identify them. That's who they are. Okay, that's what it's all about. And the gear and all the marketing and all the rest of that stuff, that's just something that's part of their world. But for people that had an experience or had some experiences when they were young, and now they're in their 40s or 50s, or maybe they're just now newly retired and they're trying to think of what am I going to do with this time and this money that I have? What should I be up to? I would say that you have to get out and you have to engage the public. And so I'm very involved in public education and astronomy. I run we have a nonprofit organization called Astronomy Outreach Network, and we support, Astronomy Outreach Network supports other people that do public education in astronomy. And what's public education in astronomy? This ranges all the way from people that get on a street corner with their telescope and show people the moon, to people that are doing a little bit more formal education, like in schools. They're augmenting what their teachers don't know with their knowledge, and they're helping out the school in that way, to professional public education people. So that's the EPO community that's associated with the observatories and planetariums, and NASA has a massive EPO program. So there you're exposing a lot of people of all ages. And one of the most enjoyable things that I do, the juice for me, is to get out on a street corner, you know, in a busy city and show people Saturn for the first time. And you will get people of every age, of every walk of life, you know, and I have yet to meet people that really are turned off by that. I think almost everyone is curious about the night sky. They're curious about how far away things are. It's a question of our origins, you know, and where we're going.
So hey guys, here we are at Table Mountain. This is day 3. We had some clouds last night, so everybody kind of chilled out and didn't do much of stargazing. But
it cleared at 2 a.m.
Oh, was that? I didn't hear that. So we were
from
already
2 to
in
4
bed.
apparently it was unbelievably good. So.
And today the weather's absolutely stunning. And
a lot of people have asked me, you know, how long I've been in business, how long have I been working, you know, and the deal is that my parents are relatively poor. My mother was a single mom from my age, about 6 years old, and in 2nd grade I had a bad teacher experience, and I didn't want to go back to school. And I was telling my parents that, and I said, look, I don't want to go back to school. I hate school. I'm in 2nd grade, right? And so my parents, they said, well, you know, if you don't want to go to school, you got to go get a job. And so I said, fine, I'll go get a job, you know? And so they gave me 1 day to go try to find a job. So they actually let me out of school. I go down to downtown, you know, where I was, and no one's going to give a 2nd grader a job, you know, of course. But by the time I'm 8 years old and in 3rd grade, I do get a job, and I'm working as a janitor inside of a church. You know, so that worked out. I think that was also supported by my parents. I had a great 3rd grade teacher. School was great at that point. My job gave me a sense of self-worth, and I had a little bit of change in my pocket, so it was great. But by the time I hit 12 years old, and I'd been working pretty much continuously from 8 until 12, I thought, well, you know, I don't want to be a janitor all my life, and so I loved art, but I thought photography would be a good vocation, and I got my first camera when I was 12. By the time I'm 14, I have a full-blown darkroom, and in those teenage years, not too long afterwards, I start working professionally, and you know, I'm doing weddings, I'm doing all kinds of photography, and I'm not involved in astronomy per se at that time, but I'm always fascinated by telescopes and optics of any kind. I just love optics, and so I start working at Oceanside Photographic Center, which was an old camera store, and eventually we established that we sell telescopes there, and I sold them as telephoto lenses for photography at first, but I would take the scopes out front and we would aim them at the moon, and people just came from everywhere to see these larger telescopes and to look at the moon. And so I started learning more about the celestial objects out there. And it's at this time that I meet people from the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, I meet people from Palomar Observatory. You know, the community, the scientific community comes out in a way that and embraces this, our experience in using telescopes and sharing that experience with the public, something I'd never experienced before. The scientific community and astronomers in general are very sharing people. They want everyone to understand what's going out in space. They want to improve their scientific literacy, you know, to know where our place is in the universe. Hi everybody, Scott Roberts here. I'm back with Barbara Jean, the Vintage Airstream. I've been showing you some pictures. I'm back from my trip in China, and we have now all the plumbing has been installed. Most of the electrical's been installed. Behind me here, you can start to see the shower. I've always wanted like some sort of a bus or some sort of trailer or something like that. I had this bug since I was about 18 years old, and I was at a point in my life where I could actually make that happen. And so I did a lot of reading. I was originally going to convert a bus, and And then I started watching recreational vehicle crash videos on YouTube, okay? It's not pretty. There is no safety oversight for recreational vehicles per se. And so it kind of led me to looking at trailers as well. And trailer crash videos are also horrible. But one thing I found is that the Airstream trailers, that something like over 70% of them are still on the road, and they're the oldest trailer manufacturer around. And so also they're beautiful. I think that the art modern look of an Airstream is very cool. So I found one that was actually here in California. It was a 1968 model. The body looked good and everything. And so I bought it, I towed it back, and started the process of restoration. Since that time, we took the Airstream coast to coast. We traveled over 20,000 miles with the Airstream, and we did everything from the Winter Star Party all the way up to Table Mountain Star Party up in the northwest corner. So it's been really amazing experience, and to have people. There's this thing about people are just kind of attracted to the Airstream itself, and so wherever we go, people want to look at it, they want to look inside of it and get inside of it if they can. So we're happy to oblige that. People that know us and have seen us at star parties know that sometimes we're out until late at night. We will share. If the atmosphere is right, we'll have cocktails out. We party. I mean, this is. So we don't want to hide. We don't want to hide. Now I know that some people want to get away from a crowd or whatever, and especially people in the industry. If you're bombarded all day and you've got people asking you the same question again and again and again. And if you get tired of that, you would want to hide. I can get that. But I never get tired. People have asked me the same questions millions of times, and I'm always interested to find out, if they ask me a question that I've heard 1,000 times, I start asking them questions, and I try to get under their skin a little bit to find out really what's exciting to them and why they're into it, because I'm passionate about it. I can't imagine anything more amazing than, seeing fossil light and seeing back in time, and to see supernova as we've seen. And, if you were around when the comet impacts hit Jupiter and watching that happen, and, we got this eclipse coming up on August 21st, 2017. You know how many people are going to be blown away? Millions of people are going to see this on the center line. And I think it was Lou Mayo at NASA told me that NASA thinks this is going to be the biggest science event in human history. I can't wait to be part of that. I can't wait to answer all the questions that people might have out there. So I want to be in the thick of it. I don't want to hide.